My name is Natalie Carter. I'm 24 years old, and today is my graduation day in computer science at the University of Texas. A day I spent 4 years studying and working tirelessly to achieve. But in the moment I thought my family would hug me in celebration, all I received was a used laptop with a scratched keyboard and a worn-out battery that barely held a charge. My mother said, "It's good enough for office work." Then, they left the ceremony early to get home and prepare for my sister's graduation. 1 month later, in our backyard, surrounded by confetti and cheers, I watched my twin sister Nicole wearing a white dress, live streaming her graduation gift, a brand new BMW with a red ribbon wrapped around it, the keys handed to her along with the praise. Nicole is the future of this family. Two sisters, born on the same day, under the same roof, yet living in two completely different worlds. Have you ever experienced such painful favoritism in your own home? Share your story and let me know where you're watching this from in the comments below so I know I'm not alone. Nicole and I were born on the same day, at the same hour, just 7 minutes apart. But it seems that from the moment we opened our eyes to the world, we were set on two completely different paths. My mother said I screamed the moment I was born, my eyes wide open as if I wanted to take in everything around me, while Nicole gently gripped her mother's finger, quiet and more fragile. Maybe from that moment, my parents decided I was the strong and independent one, and Nicole was the one who needed protection. That label followed me through my entire childhood, slowly becoming an invisible wall that divided everything between us. When we were little, I often wore Nicole's hand-me-down clothes from the previous season, while Nicole always had brand new outfits. If I asked why, my mother would smile and say, "You can pull off anything, but Nicole needs to look a bit more polished." By high school, the differences became impossible to ignore. Nicole got the latest iPhone the moment it came out, while I used my father's old Android phone with a scratched case. The first time I voiced my feelings about the unfairness, my dad just patted my head and said, "You're smart, you don't need things like that to fit in. Nicole is different, she needs it so she won't fall behind her friends." And so, "You're stronger, Nicole needs us more," became the go-to line every time I questioned the imbalance. Nicole wasn't necessarily a mean person, but she grew up wrapped in privilege, and everything came easily to her. She was used to people revolving around her friends, family, everyone, and probably never thought about having to earn it. While Nicole was busy with parties, picnics, or planning her summer vacation in Europe funded by our parents, I stayed in my room, teaching myself to code from free YouTube tutorials. I remember the summer when I was 15. Nicole was sent to a summer camp in Italy for 2 weeks to broaden her horizons while I worked as a waitress at the cafe on the corner, saving every dollar I could to buy an old computer just powerful enough to run programming software. The one time I asked to join an international summer program, my mother simply said, "You don't need it, you can learn on your own. Let's save the money so Nicole can have a once-in-a-lifetime experience." In the final years of high school, the gap between us became even clearer. Nicole had her own car the moment she was old enough to drive a cream-colored Mini Cooper that Dad bought so she could get to school more safely. I rode my bike for 20 minutes or took the bus for nearly an hour. My parents would say, "You can handle yourself anywhere, Nicole isn't used to that." That line was repeated so often I could recite it by heart, but that didn't make it any easier to hear. I still remember the damp chill of drizzly days, my clothes clinging to my skin after biking home, while Nicole drove past, rolling down her window to wave at me. I didn't always feel bitter, but the sense of born together, under different skies lingered like a splinter under my skin. When we got to college, Nicole chose communications, a lighter field with plenty of time for social activities. She joined the student council, hosted events, and spent many evenings at bars or out with friends. I chose computer science, fully aware it would be a long, pressure-filled journey, but it was what I loved. I studied while working part-time at the university library's IT department, and at night I took on freelance projects to cover rent and living expenses. While Nicole's tuition and apartment near campus were fully paid for by our parents, I had to rely on scholarships and part-time jobs. More than once, I passed by Nicole's apartment and saw her fridge packed with food, while mine sat nearly empty except for a few packets of instant noodles. If anyone asked my parents about it, they would say, "Natalie doesn't need us to support her, she takes care of herself better than anyone." I won't deny that independence made me grow up faster, but it also taught me a bitter truth. In my family, fairness wasn't about giving equally, it was about who they thought needed more. And that need was never mine. I've lost count of how many times I swallowed the feeling of being left behind, trying not to let it turn into envy. But the images stacked up over the years. Nicole walking into a boutique to pick out a new dress while I carefully altered an old one. Nicole holding plane tickets for a summer trip while I worked late into the night. Nicole posting photos in a new car while I biked through the rain. All of it left me feeling like my twin sister and I didn't truly live under the same roof, but in two parallel worlds, one of abundance and one of you're on your own. By my second year of college, when I could fully cover my tuition with scholarships and work, I began to realize that the gap wasn't about resources, it was about my parents' choices. They chose to invest in Nicole, believing she would somehow represent the family, while I was simply expected to take care of myself. It hurt, but it also made me tougher. I slowly learned not to expect what I knew would never come, and instead, I focused on building my own path. Still, even as I tried to let go, that feeling of born together, under different skies clung to me, quietly shaping the way I saw everything, especially my own family. It was exactly that feeling which, later on, as I stood in the backyard watching Nicole receive a brand new BMW from our parents, became the spark. Not because I wanted the car, but because I knew that for 24 years, the scale had never shifted and if I didn't do something, it never would. My graduation day came on an early May morning, the Texas sky clear and blue, but the sun already blazing. The Frank Irwin Center, with its familiar domed roof, was draped in flags and banners, students in black gowns and square caps streaming toward the entrance. I remember standing at the doorway, taking a deep breath to steady myself, caught between excitement and nerves. Today marked the end of my 4 years in computer science, 4 years filled with sleepless nights, exhausting part-time shifts, and moments when I thought I couldn't go on. But here I was, standing in line, waiting for my turn to walk across the stage. My parents came too, sitting in the very top row, without a cheering sign or bouquet like the other families. I knew that for them, just showing up was already a concession. A week earlier, my mother had reminded me they were busy preparing for Nicole's graduation next month, the bigger ceremony, as she called it. When the MC began announcing names, the arena erupted with cheers, each student greeted by their family shouting their name, clapping, and calling out, "You did it." When my name rang out, Natalie Carter, Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, summa cum laude, I heard polite clapping, but no cheering, no one calling my name. I smiled, crossed the stage, shook the dean's hand, and accepted my diploma. For a split second, I glanced toward the corner of the stands where my parents sat, catching their eyes calm, unreadable, as if this was nothing more than a formality. When the ceremony ended, students poured outside to take photos with friends and family. I walked down the steps and saw my parents waiting at the exit. My mother held a small brown paper bag. "Congratulations," she said, handing it to me. Inside was a silver laptop, clearly used, the casing scratched in places, the keys worn smooth, the battery so degraded that when I turned it on, it showed only 48% capacity. "Good enough for office work," she said lightly, though she knew I was about to start at a tech company where computer performance wasn't a trivial matter. My father nodded, adding, "Do your best." Before immediately switching topics, how Nicole was busy preparing her speech, how she had her graduation photos taken yesterday, and they looked beautiful. How her ceremony was sure to be more spectacular. I stood there holding the laptop, feeling as though my 4 years of effort had been summed up in a single token they bought just to check a box. When they finished talking, I asked if we could take a picture to mark the occasion. My mother said maybe another time. She had to get home quickly to arrange more tables and chairs for Nicole's party. We parted ways in the parking lot, and I watched them drive off, their sleek black SUV disappearing behind the trees. I turned toward a small cafe a few blocks from the center, the place I often went to study when I needed quiet. The shop was nearly empty, golden light streaming through the windows, the rich scent of roasted coffee in the air. I chose a corner table, opened the laptop, and watched as the screen flickered for a few seconds before starting up, the fan whirring softly like a weary sigh. I stared at the display, catching my reflection, my smile carefully composed, but my eyes betraying a disappointment I couldn't hide. I pulled out my phone, opened my messages, and typed to Sam, my best friend since freshman year. Twins, but it's like we live in two different worlds. Sam replied almost instantly. I know you don't need gifts to prove anything, but they're seriously so biased. I stared at the message and gave a faint smile. Biased, that word felt far too mild for what had been a lifetime of being cast in two roles. One child adored and indulged, the other expected to fend for herself. I wasn't so angry that I wanted to cry, but the feeling hit somewhere deep where I still kept all the moments I'd been pushed out of priority, all the times I'd heard, "You're stronger, Nicole needs us more," as if it were a valid reason to take something from me and hand it to my sister. Sitting in the corner of the cafe, surrounded by the scent of coffee and the soft hum of jazz, I knew this would just be another day on the long list of days I'd had to swallow that difference. I had no idea that, just a month later, from this very old laptop, I would write a report that, once it landed in their hands, would change everything forever. Nicole's graduation took place on a Saturday at the end of June. The heat in Austin was so intense the pavement seemed to shimmer, but our backyard had been transformed into a dazzling stage. My parents had hired professional decorators. Strings of golden lights wound around the fence, white, gold, and silver balloons arched into a grand entrance, and in the center of the yard stood a massive object draped in deep red fabric, taking up nearly all the open space. Round tables covered in white cloths, chairs tied with golden bows, wine glasses neatly arranged beside custom-printed menus. It looked more like a wedding reception than a graduation party. Nicole emerged from the house in a floor-length white dress, the fitted waist accentuating her figure, her softly curled hair falling over her shoulders, makeup flawless. She walked out like a star, one hand holding her phone as she live-streamed on Instagram, the other waving to each group of guests. The stream's hearts and comments climbed rapidly, friends leaving constant congratulations. "Nicole Carter, our future PR queen." Someone typed in the chat, and I heard Nicole giggle. My father stood beside the red-draped centerpiece, microphone in hand. When Nicole approached, he placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice ringing with pride. "Today is the day my youngest daughter officially graduates in communications. Nicole is not only beautiful but also smart, talented, and the future of this family. We believe she will take the Carter name to new heights." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. I stood in the corner of the yard, my glass of cold water nearly melted to nothing, watching it all as if I were seeing a movie I was never meant to be part of. My father motioned for Nicole to pull the cover. She gripped the edge of the fabric, took a deep breath as if to heighten the drama, then yanked it away. The cover fell, revealing a pearl-white BMW gleaming under the late afternoon sun, a massive red ribbon wrapped around it with a bow tied neatly over the hood. The yard erupted in cheers, the rapid-fire clicks of phone cameras filling the air. A few guests exclaimed, "Oh my God, unbelievable. That's a graduation gift?" Nicole lifted a hand to her mouth in feigned surprise, then immediately embraced our parents. My mother handed her the keys with a ceremonious air, as though passing down a family treasure. Nicole turned toward the camera, holding the keys high, the sunlight catching the metal until it sparkled. "Guys, I am officially the owner of this BMW." She announced on her live stream, the heart icons on the screen multiplying quickly. The comments overflowed with praise, so well-deserved. "The golden girl of the Carter family." From somewhere behind me, I caught the murmurs of a small group. "Same age, but what a difference. One's a computer engineer, the other's a princess, and guess who gets the car?" Another chuckled softly. "The older one probably doesn't need it, she's independent now." I I swallowed a sigh, forcing a polite smile when someone turned to nod at me. I had no intention of ruining this party, at least, not on the surface. But inside, there was a creeping coldness, not the kind born of envy or competition, but the chill of realizing just how right I had been all along. 4 weeks ago, I had received a used laptop with the words "good enough for office work" and been left sitting alone in a cafe. Today, my sister was handed a brand new BMW alongside the title "Future of the Family." This contrast wasn't just about gifts, it was a crystal clear message. My place in this family was never at the center, and it never had been. The celebration went on with the clinking of glasses, endless selfies of Nicole beside her car, and guests offering their congratulations. I quietly observed, taking in every detail, the way my parents beamed as they introduced Nicole to everyone, the way my sister basked in every glance and compliment, the way people effortlessly overlooked my presence. I didn't wait around hoping someone would pull me into a photo, nor did I expect anyone to ask, "What about Natalie?" I've learned long ago those questions never came. Just a week after Nicole's graduation party, I started my new job at Vertex Systems, a global technology company headquartered in Austin. The 12-story headquarters gleamed with blue-tinted glass that caught the sunlight, its spacious lobby featuring a sleek reception desk and LED screens showcasing the company's top projects. On my first day, as my brand new employee badge scanned through the security gate, I felt like I was stepping into a new chapter, not just for my career, but for my life. My role was Technical Project Manager in the Enterprise Solutions Division. During orientation, my direct manager, Marcus, a tall, confident African-American man in his early 40s with a deep, steady voice, emphasized the importance of a project I'd be joining. Vertex had just renewed its strategic partnership with BMW North America, taking on responsibility for developing and maintaining the management and security system for VIP customer data. In other words, every vehicle purchase made through special corporate or high-level partner programs would have to pass through the system. In my very first week, I was granted access to the GSM portal, a secure system that only a handful of key employees could enter. This portal stored all data related to transactions, from buyer profiles, vehicle identification numbers, and payment methods, to registration status. It was a highly sophisticated system where every action was logged and every query left a trace. Marcus explained, "Natalie, you'll be responsible for cross-checking the data on transactions under the Employee Purchase Program. This program was designed by BMW to reward those who've made significant contributions, but that also makes it prone to abuse. Your job is to make sure every record is legitimate." I took on the task with absolute focus. In the first few days, I reviewed dozens of files daily, cars delivered to senior executives, top engineers, and occasionally their eligible relatives. Everything seemed routine until one Wednesday afternoon, when a familiar VIN appeared on my screen. My eyes moved to the model column BMW 3 Series, pearl white, delivered in Austin, Texas, less than 2 weeks ago. My chest tightened as I scrolled to the owner name field. The name that appeared made me instantly sit up straight. Richard Carter, my father's name. I kept reading and saw the relation to employee field. Friend of former employee. In the employee ID column was a number I recognized from the company's disciplinary records, a former employee who had been terminated last year for fraud in the purchase program. My grip on the mouse tightened as my mind began to piece everything together. Nicole's brand new BMW hadn't been purchased through normal means. It had slipped through a back door in the system, using the credentials of someone no longer eligible to secure a 30% special discount. And under the contract between Vertex and BMW, any car purchased outside of eligibility rules would be subject to immediate repossession. I sat frozen for a moment, my eyes locked on the screen. Part of me was stunned by the coincidence, another part recognized that this wasn't coincidence at all, but an opportunity. An opportunity I hadn't sought out, but one that had landed squarely in my hands. I thought back to the moment Nicole held up those BMW keys on her live stream, the way my parents looked at her with pride, and the feeling of standing on the sidelines of my own family's story. I didn't feel instant glee or revenge, it was more of a deep, steady calm. As if every piece from the past 24 years had finally fallen into place, and I knew exactly what I was going to do next. In the days that followed, I continued processing other files as usual, but I carved out extra time to comb through this one transaction. I started with the VIN, a long string of characters, but as unique as a fingerprint for that pearl-white BMW. In the system, it clearly showed the delivery date, the location being an official BMW dealership in Austin, just 15 minutes from our home. The purchase program field spelled it out: Employee Purchase Program, Level A. This was the top-tier discount, cutting 30% off the list price, reserved exclusively for full-time BMW employees or strategic partners like Vertex. But what caught my attention most was the employee sponsor field, the person listed as the sponsor for this transaction. The name Daniel Royce appeared, and within seconds my memory clicked into place. Daniel had once been a project manager at Vertex, well known for his track record, but fired last year for exploiting his internal access to purchase multiple discounted vehicles and resell them for profit. His appearance on this transaction was highly irregular because under company policy, once someone had been terminated for such violations, their name was permanently barred from all partner discount programs. I dug deeper, pulling up Daniel's related records. In the internal notes section, I found a small line. Terminated August last year, currently prohibited from using any Vertex or partner privileges. That meant if Daniel's name appeared here, either someone had tampered with the system, or he had agreed to let someone else use his credentials, and that someone else was my parents. I moved on to the buyer information section. The legal owner of the BMW was listed as Richard Carter, my father. The delivery address was our home. The payment details showed a large down payment and the remainder financed through a partner bank. On paper, everything looked fine except for the origin of the discount. No one in my family worked for BMW or Vertex except for me, and I certainly hadn't registered to buy a car. To be absolutely certain, I pulled up the scanned sales contract stored by the dealership. In the employee sponsor signature box, the handwriting matched Daniel Royce, or at least something made to look exactly like it. I zoomed in, comparing it with his signature from old HR files, and spotted subtle inconsistencies, like a hook stroke that was slightly straighter. That made me suspect this wasn't a live signature at all, but a reused scan from an older document. If that was true, it wasn't just a case of abusing the employee discount, it was also document fraud, a violation serious enough for BMW to demand immediate repossession of the vehicle. I saved every piece of evidence. System screenshots, the contract file, the transaction access logs. Each file was clearly labeled with the date and time. It wasn't that I didn't trust the company to investigate thoroughly, but I wanted to have the complete case in my own hands, just in case things turned personal. The rules between BMW and Vertex were strict. Any transaction that violated the discount eligibility conditions would result in the vehicle being repossessed within 14 days of discovery. No exceptions, no negotiations. If that BMW was reclaimed, Nicole would have to hand it over immediately and the entire purchase would be recorded in my parents' legal history. But I wasn't in a hurry. I knew that acting too soon would strip the moment of its weight. If I moved immediately, my parents would think I was lashing out over the used laptop, turning this into a petty act of revenge. They'd twist the story until I became the ungrateful child in their version of events. I needed to wait for a moment when it would look as though everything was entirely out of my hands, when it would seem like nothing more than the natural consequence of their own actions. So I waited. I kept going to work, having lunch with colleagues, answering my mother's casual texts like, "Nicole's got a photo shoot with her new car this week, it's gorgeous." I didn't react, just replied with neutral emojis. But every time I logged into the system, I checked the file for that car, like a hunter inspecting her trap, the prey still there, completely unaware, and I knew it was only a matter of time before I tightened the noose. While waiting, I did one more thing. I checked the scheduled maintenance records for the BMW. The data showed Nicole had booked her first service appointment at the end of the month, at the very same dealership that sold her the car. I smiled when I saw it. If I let everything unfold right before or right after that date, the blow would land even harder. They'd think they were just going in for a routine service, only to be handed a notice of repossession. With each passing day, I felt calmer. Not because the anger had faded, but because I knew I was holding all the power. I didn't need to chase justice. I only had to stand still and let the process do its work. And when the time came, the strike would be clean, precise, leaving no room for excuses or blame. I had spent 24 years being pushed aside, told I was the strong one who doesn't need help. Now, with a single well-timed click, I would show them that even the strong one knows how to protect her boundaries and, when necessary, how to reclaim what has always belonged to no one but fairness itself. It took me nearly a week to prepare everything down to the smallest detail. Every file of evidence was organized into a single folder. System screenshots, the sales contract with its suspicious signature, Daniel Royce's old HR records, and the complete BMW internal discount policy with the repossession clause highlighted. Each document was clearly named and numbered so that anyone opening the folder could follow the story from start to finish. I wasn't going to leave a single gap my parents or Nicole could use to claim it was all some kind of misunderstanding. When everything was ready, I drafted a short, concise report using formal, objective language. This vehicle purchase was conducted under the name of an employee no longer eligible for the employee discount program. The file and signature show signs of reusing old documentation. We recommend the legal department verify and process this matter in accordance with the contractual terms agreed upon with BMW. I read it 3 times, ensuring not a single line betrayed any personal feeling, then hit send to the legal department's shared email and CC'd Marcus, my direct manager. After that, I went about my daily work as though nothing unusual had happened. But in my mind, an invisible clock had begun to count down. I knew the legal department wouldn't drag their feet. This process was standardized, verification to formal notice to vehicle repossession. The only question was when they would send the notice. About a week later, on a Monday morning, I had just set my coffee down on my desk when a notification popped up on my screen. An email from the legal department, subject line, Notice of Vehicle Return, Policy Violation. I opened it and read every word carefully. The message was direct and unambiguous. We have verified that the BMW 3 Series, VIN 30-, was purchased through the Employee Purchase Program using the information of an individual no longer eligible. In accordance with the partnership terms between BMW and Vertex Systems, the customer has 7 days to return the vehicle to the delivering BMW dealership. Failure to do so will result in the initiation of appropriate legal measures. The email was sent directly to my father's address, CC'd to my mother and Nicole, with a PDF attached detailing the return procedure. I didn't have to think long to imagine the scene at home when they read that email. Most likely, Nicole would open it first, probably on her phone while lying in bed, and scream. I could almost hear her voice. Mom. Someone. They're saying they're taking my car back. Then my parents would rush over, trying to read over each other's shoulders, before immediately calling me. And, just as I expected, my phone began buzzing nonstop only minutes later. The first call was from Nicole, but I didn't answer. I knew her voice would be a full-blown storm right now. Next came my mother. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. It wasn't until my father called that I finally picked up. His voice was a mix of anger and panic. Natalie, what is going on? Do you know what they just sent us? They're demanding we return Nicole's car. I let him finish, even catching Nicole shouting in the background, What did you do? This is my car. My mother's voice cut in sharply. Don't tell me you had anything to do with this. I kept my voice calm, each word deliberate. I think that BMW will be moving to a new home soon. A heavy silence followed. I heard my father inhale sharply through the phone, my mother gasp, You can't, and Nicole all but scream, You're ruining my life. I simply replied, Number, I didn't do anything. This is company policy. If someone buys a car through fraud, they have to return it. That's all. My father's tone shifted, anger hardening into threat. You think this is smart? You'll regret treating your family like this. I didn't answer right away, just said softly. If you want to blame someone, blame the person who chose to buy the car that way. I'm only doing my job. Then I hung up before they could say anything more. Setting my phone down, I looked out the office window at the blinding Austin summer sun glinting off the glass towers. A strange quiet spread through my chest. It wasn't gloating, and it wasn't exactly relief. It was more the sense that everything was finally moving in the right direction, that the wheel of fairness had at last begun to turn, and this time, it wouldn't stop just because someone thought I was strong enough not to need anything. I knew that between now and the 7-day deadline, there would be more calls, more messages, maybe even a mix of pleading and accusations. But I was ready for all of it. That BMW had never legally belonged to them. And now, they would have to face that. No dodging, no shifting the blame, and certainly, no dumping it on me. 3 days after the call, on the day the email arrived, my parents sent me a text inviting me to have dinner and talk this through. I knew this wasn't a friendly invitation, it was a family tribunal, and I would be the one on the stand. Still, I agreed. I wanted to look them in the eyes when I finally said the things I'd carried for over 24 years. The restaurant they chose was in downtown Austin, a high-end place with warm golden lighting, crisp white tablecloths, and gleaming crystal wine glasses. I arrived on time and saw them already seated at a table near the window, the busy night street just beyond the glass. Nicole was there too, her hair pulled into a high ponytail, makeup flawless, but her eyes slightly swollen, probably from crying or fuming. When I approached, no one smiled or greeted me. Instead, I was met with cold, assessing stares. The moment I sat down, my father started, his voice low but edged with restrained fury. You know why we're here. You've gone too far, Natalie. This was a private family matter, and you let outsiders find out. Do you understand the consequences? My mother nodded beside him, cutting in. What you did was airing our dirty laundry. People will think our family cheats, that we're dishonest. Nicole curled her lip. Well, actually, you did make me lose all my dignity. My friends are talking about it everywhere. Are you happy now? I sat up straight, my voice steady. I'm not happy. But I'm not ashamed, either. I did my job. The person who cheated wasn't me. All I did was make sure the rules applied equally to everyone. My father leaned forward, his voice heavier. Don't hide behind excuses. Everyone knows you did this out of jealousy. You've always acted like you were better than Nicole, and now you're just trying to drag her down. I let out a short laugh, just enough to make the whole table freeze. Jealous? I looked him straight in the eye. We were born on the same day, under the same roof, but I've always had to fight for myself. From clothes and phones to school and even transportation. I worked part-time from my sophomore year in college to pay rent, while Nicole got her own car. I taught myself to earn scholarships, while Nicole went on summer study trips abroad funded by you. And every time I asked why, the answer was always, you're stronger, Nicole needs us more. Today, all I'm asking for is fairness. My mother moved as if to cut in, but I held up a hand to stop her. My voice was no longer calm, it was firm. Fairness isn't something you divide by giving more to whoever you think is weaker and leaving the stronger to fend for themselves. Fairness means the rules apply the same to everyone. That BMW was purchased through fraud, and anyone would have to return it. If the buyer wasn't Dad, but some stranger, how would you feel if the company looked the other way? That would be favoritism. Nicole tilted her chin. You could have just let this go. It's just a car. I looked at her and gave a tired smile. It's just a car to you, but it's a principle to me. And it's exactly because people keep thinking it's just that some get to bend the rules while others carry all the weight. The air at the table thickened. I saw my father's hand tighten around his glass, my mother staring out the window as if to avoid the conversation. Nicole crossed her arms, lips pressed into a thin line. I knew I had touched a truth they didn't want to hear, that this wasn't about a car at all, but about an entire system of favoritism and neglect that had existed for over 2 decades. My father sighed, trying to soften his tone. We're family. Sometimes you have to let things go. I answered without hesitation. I've been letting things go my whole life with this family. But letting go doesn't mean turning a blind eye. Letting go doesn't mean enabling what's wrong. Family is where fairness should begin, not where it gets twisted. I set my napkin down on the table and stood. If following the rules means airing the family's dirty laundry, then maybe we don't share the same definition of family. I don't hate anyone, but I won't go back to the place where I'm expected to stay silent and endure. Picking up my bag, I looked at each of them in turn. I'll say just one thing starting today: I'm not stepping back into the old cycle. No one spoke. My father stared down at the table, my mother kept her gaze fixed on the window, and Nicole turned her face away. I turned my back and walked out of the restaurant. The glass door shut behind me, the noise of the night street spilling in and mixing with the sound of my footsteps on the stone pavement. Behind me, that table remained silent, and I knew that silence wasn't agreement. It was the realization, for the first time, that they could no longer control me. 4 days after that night at the restaurant, the moment I had known was inevitable finally arrived. That morning, just as I sat down at my desk in the office, my phone buzzed with a notification from the security camera positioned in front of my parents' house. I didn't usually review footage from that camera, but today, the alert with the title "Motion Detected, Front Driveway" made me open it immediately. On the screen, a small white truck bearing the BMW Certified Service logo slowly pulled into the driveway. 2 uniformed employees stepped out, one holding a clipboard, the other wearing gloves, walking straight toward the pearl-white BMW parked in the shade of a tree. I zoomed in on the frame. The morning sunlight glinted off its glossy paint, but the license plate protector had already been removed, ready for the repossession process. The front door opened, and Nicole appeared hair messy, wearing pink pajamas. She threw her hands up in protest, her voice high-pitched. Even without sound from the camera, I could clearly imagine every word. "This is my car, no one has the right to take it." One of the employees pointed to the papers on the clipboard, flipped a page, and calmly explained something. My father emerged behind Nicole, his face flushed red. He held a phone to his ear, speaking sharply while pointing toward the street, probably calling someone at the dealership to fix the situation. But the 2 BMW employees remained polite and firm, continuing their work without pause. In less than 10 minutes, the BMW's engine was started, it rolled up the incline, and was secured neatly onto the transport truck. The clank of the wheel locks echoed like a period at the end of a long sentence, a final end to the performance my family had staged. Nicole stood frozen for a few seconds, then turned back inside, slamming the door. My parents didn't walk the employees out. An hour later, I saw Nicole post a Facebook status, white text on a black background. "It's sad when someone in your own family deliberately destroys your happiness. But karma will come soon enough." The post quickly gained dozens of hearts from her friends, along with comments like, "Who would do that?" and "Oh my God, that's awful." I scrolled past without reacting, without explaining. A few mutual friends messaged me asking, "What happened?" I replied with just one sentence: that car didn't belong to her. My parents, meanwhile, went completely silent. New texts, new calls, new emails. I figured they needed time to rewrite the story into a version they could live with. Maybe the company misunderstood us, or someone set us up, anything but admitting they had chosen to cheat. That silence stretched on for weeks, and surprisingly, I felt no urge to fill it. In fact, I felt lighter. No more messages comparing me to Nicole, no more calls starting with, "Your sister just," no more requests for help disguised as, "It's for the family." I poured myself into my work, took on larger projects at Vertex, and found I could breathe more easily without the constant effort of enduring while pretending I was fine. At night, I would sit on my apartment balcony, watching the lights of Austin sprawl into the distance, listening to the hum of traffic below, and think about everything that had happened. I felt no regret. I felt no need to justify myself. Everything had unfolded exactly as it should have, Wrongdoing was uncovered, the system functioned as it was meant to, and for the first time I hadn't let family sentiment tip the scales away from fairness. To them, maybe I had betrayed blood ties. But to me, I had simply refused to keep standing silently on the sidelines. And in the long silence from their end, I discovered a new kind of freedom, one I had never truly known in the past 24 years. Nearly a year after the BMW was repossessed, my life had changed so much that looking back, I barely recognized the person I'd been. The quiet distance between my parents and me remained, but it was no longer an open wound. It was more like a scar, still tender if pressed, but no longer bleeding. During that time, I threw myself into my work at Vertex, leading major projects and, most notably, successfully launching a data security platform that earned high praise in the tech world. This time, the recognition I received didn't come from polite words or reluctant glances, but from tangible results and a team that trusted me completely. Then one morning, in early December, as I was reviewing reports, an email popped up with the subject line, "Congratulations, Forbes 30 Under 30 Class of the Year." I opened it, reading each line as my heartbeat quickened. They had selected me for the list of outstanding young figures in technology. The attached photo showed me at a panel discussion, speaking in front of a large screen, the stage lights making me look almost brighter than I remembered myself. 3 months later, I was in New York, attending the annual tech conference where the Forbes 30 Under 30 members were honored. The hall was wide and high-ceilinged, the stage lights casting a warm yet sharp glow. When the host called my name, applause echoed all around. I stepped forward, took the microphone, drew a deep breath, and looked out at hundreds of faces, entrepreneurs, engineers, young founders, and students searching for inspiration. I began slowly, each word deliberate. I want to share something simple that took me years to truly understand. Your worth is not measured by the gifts someone gives you, but by how you create it yourself. A gift could be a car, a plane ticket, or just an old laptop. But those things don't define you. What defines you is how you use what you have, whether it's little or much, to build your own path. I saw a few people nod, some smiling, so I continued. If you're in an environment where recognition only goes to a few, don't let that make you question your value. You have the right to stand up, set boundaries, and demand fairness, not by shouting, but by letting your results speak for you. When I finished, the hall erupted into applause again. There were no confetti cannons, no giant red ribbons, but the feeling was stronger than at any party I had ever stood on the sidelines of. This time, I wasn't looking for the approving gaze of any particular person. I had created it myself and given it to myself. That afternoon, I left the venue and caught a flight back to Austin. By the time the plane landed, dusk had settled over the city. I picked up my new electric car from the parking lot, a model I had chosen myself, paid for myself, without needing anyone's help. Its deep metallic blue paint caught the last light of the sunset, and the dashboard showed a full battery, ready for a long drive. I headed toward the bridge over Lady Bird Lake. The water below was painted in shades of orange and purple by the setting sun, and the early spring wind swept in cool through the half-open window. The lights of Austin began to sparkle in the distance, the buildings reflecting like scattered gemstones. I loosened my grip on the wheel, letting the hum of the tires and the rush of the wind fill the cabin. In that moment, I smiled, not the polite, practiced smile I wore at family gatherings, but one of genuine satisfaction. I knew the road ahead would still have gaps I could never bridge with my parents, and Nicole might never understand why I did what I did. But that no longer mattered. What mattered was that I had broken free from the cycle of unfairness, found my voice, and proven that my worth had never depended on anyone's favoritism. The electric car glided smoothly across the bridge, the glow of sunset slowly melting into a gentle darkness. I tapped the console lightly to play one of my favorite jazz tracks. My mind wasn't on what had been lost, it was filled with a steady, peaceful fullness. I didn't know exactly where the road ahead would take me, but I knew one thing for certain: the steering wheel was in my hands now, and I would never let it go again. If you grew up in a home where love came with conditions, where you had to work twice as hard yet were still pushed out of priority, remember this. Your worth is not defined by how they treat you, but by the person you strive to become every day. You can't change the past or force someone to be fair, but you can build a life where fairness begins with you. Take the pain and turn it into strength, and use that strength to open the door that leads you into the light.